We're rocking. Not really. If you watch this, that's great. If you just listen to it, you probably are rather confused by the first 10, 15 seconds of this because I normally make comments about the video. But guys, I'm so thankful. I'm just so blown away that we're here. 73 days ago, I uploaded the video about what I wanted to do. And I got so much support and encouragement to do it. Honestly, I do not think I could have done it had I not heard the support and encouragement from all of you all this time. Uh, for those of you that know kind of what led up to this, it was a tough time. But God took me about 4 years ago through the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, and just a real intensive study. I was physically unable to do a lot of things, so I was forced uh, to find a way to study. And someday I'll get into that whole story, but it's not really as relevant as it is when we look at people like Joseph and we look at people like Jacob and Abraham. These are just regular people that were struggling to do what they were supposed to be doing when God just jumped into their lives and broke through all this noise about other gods and other things. And uh, so that's how we got here. And we're at Genesis chapter 50. So let's wrap this up so we can get started on Exodus, so we can do what all of you have been waiting for, get to Leviticus. We'll get there, I promise. But we're going to start Exodus next. The next video will be Exodus, and I'm contemplating doing some other things, but I have a really good study on Jonah that I'll probably do and make that available. So the key is let's study the Bible together. So let's wrap up Genesis, the first book of the Bible, the book of beginnings. So it says this. I'm going to read from the complete Jewish Bible just because it's chapter 50, and I think that would be a really cool thing to do. Not really. New Living Translation. Let's go with it. Joseph threw himself on his father and wept over him and kissed him. Then Joseph told the physicians who served him to embalm his father's body. So Jacob was embalmed. The embalming process took the usual 40 days, and the Egyptians mourned his death for 70 days. When the period of mourning was over, Joseph approached Pharaoh's advisors and said, "Please do me this favor and speak to Pharaoh on my behalf. Tell him that my father made me swear an oath. He said to me, 'Listen, I am about to die. Take my body back to the land of Canaan and bury me in the tomb I prepared for myself. So please allow me to go and bury my father. After his burial, I will return without delay.' Pharaoh agreed to Joseph's request. 'Go and bury your father as he made you promise,' he said. So Joseph went to bury his father. He was accompanied by all of Pharaoh's officials, all the senior members of Pharaoh's household, and all the senior officers of Egypt. That's huge. Joseph also took his entire household and his brothers and their households, but they left their little children and flocks and herds in the land of Goshen. Did you know that? Maybe you didn't. A great number of chariots and charioteers accompanied Joseph. When they arrived at the threshing floor of Atad near the Jordan River, they held a great and solemn memorial service with a 7 day period of mourning for Joseph's father. The local residents, the Canaanites, watched them mourning at the threshing floor at Atad. Then they renamed that place, which is near the Jordan, Abel Mizraim, for they said, "This is a place of deep mourning for these Egyptians." See, the Canaanites just assumed they were all Egyptians. So Jacob's sons did as he commanded them. They carried his body to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre. This is the cave that Abraham had bought as a permanent burial site from Ephron the Hittite. After burying Jacob, Joseph returned to Egypt with his brothers and all who had accompanied him to his father's burial. But now that their father was dead, Joseph's brothers became fearful. Now Joseph will show his anger and pay us back for all the wrong we did to him. So they sent this message to Joseph. "Before your father died, he instructed us to say to you, 'Please forgive your brothers for the great wrong they did to you, for their sin in treating you so cruelly. So we, the servants of the God of your father, beg you to forgive our sin. When Joseph received the message, he broke down and wept. Then the brothers came and threw themselves down before Joseph. Look, we are your slaves, they said. But Joseph replied, don't be afraid of me. Am I God that I can punish you? You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. That's how I get through almost every day. You intended it for harm, but God used it for good. He brought me to this position so that I could save the lives of many people. No, don't be afraid. I will continue to take care of you and your children. So he reassured them by speaking kindly to them. So Joseph and his brothers and their families continued to live in Egypt. Joseph lived to the age of 110. He lived to see 3 generations of descendants of his son Ephraim, and he lived to see the birth of the children of Manasseh's son Machir, whom he claimed as his own. Soon I will die, Joseph told his brothers, but God will surely come to help you and lead you out of this land of Egypt. He will bring you back to the land he solemnly promised to give Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear an oath, and he said, when God comes to help you and lead you back, you must take my bones with you. So Joseph died at the age of 110. The Egyptians embalmed him, and his body was placed in a coffin in Egypt. Wow. So he knew God was coming. He didn't have any doubt about it. He didn't say if he did, he said when he does. So Joseph orders Jacob embalmed. They believed the soul could not rest until the body disintegrates. So embalming was not normal at all, but it had to be taken to Canaan. And I don't know if you've ever walked across the desert with a dead body, but that gets a little terrible after a while. So usually it was the priest of Osiris. Embalming was a religious practice, not a medical one. But Egyptians believed in it because that's why the pyramids and all that kind of stuff, because you needed to be okay in order to live in the afterlife kind of thing. So we have 2 periods mentioned, 40 days and 70 days. 40 days of embalming and followed by 30 days of mourning give us the 70 days. So in verse 5, Joseph goes to Pharaoh to ask permission. Pharaoh was concerned that Joseph might not return because remember, Joseph did all this great stuff, but also he was the one they were blaming for everything. So he was kind of his shield. He didn't want him to go anywhere. That's why they had so many government officials and all of the military presence, basically to make sure he came back. So the brothers worried Joseph still held the grudge, and they didn't understand the condition of his heart. I would love to say that everybody that should ask for forgiveness from you would do it this way, but they won't. 99% of the time, it won't happen this way. But Joseph was at a place, and I pray God makes me like Joseph, where I can forgive those offenses because I know God allowed them to get me where I needed to be. Not everything bad that happens to you was a surprise. Some of it was divine providence. God knew it was going to happen. It just looks bad to you, but it doesn't to him. That's a hard thing to learn, believe me. If you're shaking your head saying, Brandon, I wished I could get that, I shake my head too. It is a hard one, but if we get it, it makes our lives so much better. But he also realized that the place God brought him, there was no other way to get there. So that's the only way it would have worked. It's cool that Joseph got to see his sons, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren. Can you imagine? I love my grandkids, but I can't even imagine getting to see my great-grandkids. I guess it's possible. I'm pretty young. I'm only like in my 20s. But Joseph was 110 years old when he died. I don't know if I'll make it that long. He died an old man. It's unlikely that any of his brothers survived. He lived the longest. These were the grandchildren and nephews that they were talking about here as all the people. But that's Genesis, chapter 50. That's the whole book of Genesis. In 73 days, we covered it. This is pretty awesome. So we're going to jump into Exodus. You're going to love it, and I can't wait to teach it. So God bless. Let's keep going. Love God, love people, and change the world.